SOP 279, it's like you're in the room with me at Podcamp Cincy.
It's the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. Here's Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005, I am your personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson. Thanking you so much for tuning in to the School of Podcasting's morning announcements, where we talk about all things podcasting, from planning to promoting to today. We're going to be talking about making money with your podcast. What we're going to be listening to is my presentation from Podcamp Cincy. And speaking of Podcamp Cincy, I want to thank everybody that I bumped into. I'm not going to name any names. Well, I'll name a couple names. Number one, Rich Palmer, always a great guy. Mike Bell from Blueberry. Ran into Daniel Johnson Jr., who was my hero, who brought me a Mountain Dew. Because I had turned into, you ever had that, back in the day, you had that drunken friend at the party that was really annoying that kept saying, I was in sales. I sold stuff. I was good sales, right? And then you'd see him like 10 minutes later, like, hey, Dave, I was in sales. This good stuff, sold it, sales. And then you see them like 3 hours later and you get ready to leave the party and they're like, hey, Dave, let me tell you something. I was in sales. Sold good stuff, good sales stuff, me, sire. Because it turns out I had to I play in a musical group. And to make a long story short, I had to play Friday night and drive to Cincinnati, and I had a whole 2 hours sleep. And apparently, everyone I told, because there were some people that had like 4 hours sleep, and I'd be like, I had 2 hours sleep, right? So it was funny at the after party, I was talking to somebody, blah, 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 and she was talking about her drive back, and I said, yeah, I've got a 4-hour drive back to Cleveland, blah, 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 and I had 2 hours sleep, and she goes, yeah, I heard that earlier, and I'm thinking, oh no, I've turned into this guy, 2 hours sleep. So I apologize for anybody, especially Rich and Daniel, probably had to hear that like 500 times. They're probably like, yeah, okay, big deal, 2 hours sleep, deal with it. But Daniel brought me a Mountain Dew, he said, hitting the microphone, and thank you for that. Thank you to Daniel Lewis of the Audacity to Podcast. Got to meet Cliff Ravenscraft. That was hilarious because we had said we wanted to kind of talk to each other while we were there, and it just didn't happen. And I saw him at the after party. I said, man, we didn't get a chance to do that interview. We'll have to set it up. And he was leaving. He had to go to a bonfire, and I had to leave because I had 2 hours sleep and I had a 4-hour drive home. So we both had to leave, and then we went out in the parking lot and talked for 20 minutes. So I thought that was funny. It was a great time. The venue was phenomenal. Daniel did a great job, and all the people that were helping him out. It was an awesome, awesome time. If you ever get a chance to go to a podcamp, I highly recommend it. And so, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you go to, since it's the holidays, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/holiday music, there's a company, I've talked about this before, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/free music, they have free. Can you put up your little quotation fingers for me and do that little thing? Free music. It's free, and then you pay $8 for the shipping, but it's a whole CD of music. And so if you want some Jingle All the Way, and there's all sorts of different, there's like country Christmas and jazz Christmas and standard Christmas. If you're looking to have some of that for your podcast, it's only $8. Why they don't allow you to buy it immediately as a download, I don't know. I guess because it'd have to actually be free then. But check it out at schoolofpodcasting.com/holiday music. But here is my presentation from Podcamp Cincy on the book More Podcast Money. This is always typically the worst time of the day to train because everybody has that whole Thanksgiving I need a nap thing going on because we've all just eaten tons of pasta and things like that. So my name's Dave Jackson. I'm from the schoolofpodcasting.com, and today we're going to be talking about how you can turn your passion into profit. Along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to it's Podcamp. Just interrupt and ask away, and if I say we're going to talk about that in a second, we will. Definitely want to thank our sponsors today, obviously, NKU and the Informatics, the College of Informatics, Cliff Ravenscraft, especially for lunch. It was very nice of him, and Griffin Technologies. So thank you guys very much, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a great day, and it's nice that people like that help us out with that. So we're going to breeze through this topic because it's really boring, and that is, who the heck is Dave Jackson? I've been podcasting since 2005. I started the School of Podcasting back in 2005. My podcast about podcasting called The Morning Announcements has been downloaded over 520,000 times. I'm author of the book, More Podcast Money, which you can find at Oddly enough, morepodcastmoney.com. Yeah, not at Amazon yet. It's getting there. My blog is at davidjackson.org because David Jackson won't sell me, davidjackson.com. I do a podcast, which a lot of this information has kind of come from, called The Power of Podcasting. So if you're trying to sell advertising on your podcast, point them at that website because it's basically podcast success stories. And then again, my website is schoolofpodcasting.com, and my coaching service is at podcastcoaching.com. So the first thing I want to talk about is, first of all, podcasting. There are purists out there that when you say I want to make money with my podcast, they look at me like I'm the devil. And so I want to say that up front. If you're a nonprofit and you don't want to make money with your podcast, by all means, there's no rule in the book that says you have to make money with your podcast. There are many different motivations for starting a podcast. Why I wrote the book and why I make this seminar is after starting the School of Podcasting, there were a few years would go by. I'm like, hey, how's your podcast going? And they're like, oh, we're doing this and doing that. I'm like, okay, well, are you making any money at it yet? And they're like, well, no, we haven't been approached by a sponsor yet. And I'm like, okay, but are you making any money yet? And they're like, well, no, we haven't been approached by a sponsor. And there are more ways than just having somebody write you a check to benefit from your podcasting. But the first thing I want to point out is, if this is your motivation to start a podcast, do not start a podcast.
Well, I was going to say forge ahead.
Well, it is if you're patient. I had somebody sign up at the School of Podcasting last week that has been listening to my podcast for not 1, not 2, 3 years before they finally went, hey, this guy seems pretty cool. I'm going to sign up for his membership site. So it's a slow burn at times. Building an audience is going to take time. So keep that in mind. Understanding your audience takes time. We're going to talk about that as we go along today. Getting paid in some cases can take time. And I always tell people it takes 4 minutes to produce a 1-minute podcast. And you're like, wait a minute, don't you just record into this thing and then upload it? Well, okay, you had to find out what you're going to talk about. There's a minute. Then you record it for a minute. And then maybe you edit out the ums and your no's for a minute. And then you upload it. There's another minute. So if you're going to do a 15-minute podcast, it's going to take you an hour. So keep that in mind. That's where people, and this is why some people will start a podcast. Todd Cochran of the Blueberry Network gave me a stat once that said most people don't make it past their 7th episode because they've already started their podcast, they put it in iTunes, and they're not rich and famous. They're not on Oprah yet. Well, it's going to take a little more. It's not just that if you build it, they will come. So what do you need? It's the big word today. You got to have passion for what you're talking about. So I'm sorry, I forget your name. Joel is going to start a podcast about video games. Why? Because he loves video games. Excellent. Because there are going to be some weeks, Joel, when you may not want to do your podcast. But because you love this topic, you'll probably find the strength to push on and put that episode out. So the benefits of podcasting, we're going to talk about this today, and then we'll get into some details. Number one, you're going to be seen as an expert. I do a podcast called the Logical Weight Loss Podcast. The interesting thing about it, I'm not losing any weight. Been doing it for 3 years. I lose weight. I also then find it again. But it's interesting because I have people email me questions, and I say at the beginning of it, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a fitness trainer, I'm just a dude in the basement trying to lose weight like you. And they'll still ask me questions. Why? Because I have the podcast, and somehow they think I'm this weight loss guy, but you're seen as an expert. You're keeping your name and your brand in front of potential customers. So if you're trying to find a way to get your name in front of people, Whirlpool did a podcast and was the podcast about, hey, look, here's our new washers and dryers. No, their target audience were families, because families have lots of laundry. So what did they do? They did podcasts with tips of running a family, like how do you get your kids to brush their teeth longer, right? So they provided helpful information to their audience, and that kind of knew who their audience was and what they needed. It can increase sales of products or services. Why? Because you're seen as an expert. And so as long as you don't turn it into a giant commercial, that can increase sales. You can understand the understanding of your market through feedback. Because I always say podcasting is a time-shifted conversation. Somebody once sent me an email that said, Dave, I talk to you more than I do my friends. And we didn't talk much, but I would put out a podcast. He would email me some feedback. I would text him back, send an email back. He would call in a voicemail. I would send him an email back, and we had this conversation going. Never on the phone. Now, it has progressed to that, and I have his phone number, and he now has mine, but I now have an understanding of my audience through that. You can increase the trust in the eyes of your potential customers. Why? Because every week, I can count on you to give me more helpful hints and tips or whatever it is your podcast is about, and I know you're trustworthy because, like a good neighbor, your podcast is there every Monday, right? So you're trustworthy. You can reach a global audience. So while radio is cool, that radio signal only reaches so far. And I did a newsletter for musicians that had about 1,200 people on the email list, and I would send out a weekly newsletter. And it was cool, but I didn't really get a lot of feedback. I put a tone of voice to it and started putting it out as a podcast, and within like 2 or 3 weeks, I got my first voicemail from Germany and literally about fell out of my chair because it was just me in the basement next to the water heater. And I'm getting voicemail from Germany. It's a global audience. So let's talk about one of the things. If you attended Peggy's presentation, if you didn't, you need to listen to it. She was talking about how the power of the niche and how these what seem kind of like super niche topics are selling 50,000 books and 60,000 books. It's the power of the niche. So let's say you have a product for triathletes, not just athletes, but triathletes, the mega athlete. Well, you could, advertise in Shape Magazine, maybe Men's Magazine or Men's Health and Women's Health and Runner Magazine, but you're not really sure if you're hitting that target market. But what now if you have a podcast for triathletes where they talk about being a triathlete and how to increase your swimming score and your strength score or whatever all the other 3 things they do when you're a triathlete? Which one would you want to spend your advertising dollars on? The one where you kind of go, well, I think we're hitting, hopefully, some of these people. Or the one where it might not have the 10 bazillion readers, but now you've got, wow, here are 800 triathletes. So it's a matter of quality over quantity. The other thing is, these are some stats from a podcast that I have not done in 2 years. It was called Quiet Study Area, and it was just calming, quiet music to study by, because at the time I was a college student. And so I haven't done it in 2 years. This is from last month. I had 2,521 downloads. Not a huge number, not a small number. But the bottom line is if somebody had advertised back 2 years ago, that advertisement is still going. And this is what drives me nuts, because people try to sell advertising in podcasts like it's radio. If you advertise on the drive home on Monday, and you're not in your car on the drive home on Monday, you can't hear that advertisement anymore. But you can hear this one over and over and over again.
Do you think it's because school is back in session?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You'll notice that the numbers are going up as it's getting closer. But it's something where, yes?
I heard something, and it was probably one of the podcasts, one that's here today, talking about audience-specific advertising, where you could target where they download, it reads their IP address, where they download, and you can target them with geographical specific advertising.
Okay, I know Lipson Pro does that. Do you guys do anything that cool? Okay, so theflypod.com is another network that has advertising. So that's definitely a technology that's out there. But that's the key, is knowing your audience there so that you don't waste your dollars. Any other questions before we keep cruising? Yes, sure.
Sounds like you have multiple podcasts. Mm-hmm. So how do you not dilute your brand by having such a wide range of...
Good point.
What was the question?
The question is, how do you not... Okay, so it takes 4 minutes to make a 1-minute podcast. There's only 24 hours a day. How many podcasts can you have before you dilute your brand? And I'm glad you asked that, because it leads right into this slide. Content is king, not quality. Or I'm sorry, not quantity. Content is king. So if the great thing that people do is they'll start a podcast and, oh man, is this fun, and I'm getting feedback, and they start 10. Well, now it takes that time to find quality content, and now you're watering down your content.
And you also have to leave time for the business management side of your operation.
Right. Well, that's it. The other big part is it's not like, hey, look, I've got a podcast. Grow. It doesn't work that way. You've got to, here's my podcast, and now it's a matter of you got to go find your audience and say, guess what? There's a podcast over here. Go listen to it. There's a podcast about the band Yes, and this guy did a really cool move. He went to Yes's Twitter page and said, I just started a podcast about the band Yes. It's over here. So he found out where his audience was and said, oh, by the way, if you're curious, I started something. If you like Yes, it's something for people that like the band Yes. And within 2 weeks, the official Yes Facebook page had spotlighted this guy's podcast. So I always say it's simple, but it's not easy. Podcast promotion boils down to this. Make your podcast, have great content, then find out where your audience is, go there, and tell them about your podcast. I do a weight loss podcast. I got business cards that here I have my website, free weight loss tips, find us in iTunes, nothing about my phone number or how to contact me. It's all about here's where you can find my podcast. Where did I go? The mall. Before it opened, there was a whole group of people walking around trying to lose weight, and I just handed. And if I saw a buddy with earbuds, oh, here you go. So it's not just a matter of building it and it will come. You've got to promote it as well, and that's where you just have to gauge yourself. It's hard because again, if you're passionate about something, you want to start 50 billion podcasts. So, does that almost answer your question?
Sort of,
The other thing, let me add one point to that. When I went back to school and then graduated and had a job and was still doing all this podcasting stuff, my shows went from 40 minutes to about 15. Why? Because I didn't have time to find 40 minutes worth of stuff. Did I quit podcasting? No. I just cut it back. I would rather cover one topic in depth than 3 topics and breeze over it. But that's the other thing. The great thing about podcasting is you control it all. You are the producer, you're the engineer, you're the editor, and if you decide that, hey, I started off doing an hour-long podcast, I can't do that anymore, and I want to do it 15 minutes, guess what? Guess who you have to ask? You. And if you go, yeah, that sounds good to me, okay, well, let's move on. So you're in control of everything, which is great. Does that...
Sort of. So, for instance, you're a corporate trainer,
Mm-hmm.
but you're now talking about weight loss
Mm-hmm.
and then sleep music. So,
Right.
within your cast, there's no real continuity other than you.
There is one continuity. I was passionate about every one of those topics. I'm still trying to lose weight. I'm down 3 pounds today from than I was yesterday. I'm very passionate about cool technology, so I do the weekly web tools. I'm a musician, so I do the Marketing Musician podcast, and I love podcasting, so I do the School of Podcasting, so much so that I started the School of Podcasting's Morning Announcements, The Power of Podcasting, and now More Podcast Money. Now, More Podcast Money is about a 2-minute podcast. It's just like, hey, here's a quick tip. Here you go. Here it is. If you want the book, go buy it. So... And I even, actually, my first episode, I said, I am blatantly telling you right now, this is a companion podcast to the book. And I'm going to give you a reason to buy the book. But it's not just a commercial, which we'll talk about here in a second. It's actually something you go, oh, really? Wow, cool. Somebody got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars from Dixie to sponsor their podcast? Wow, that's cool. So it's good content. So content is king. Presentation is queen. And I always say this because what is presentation? It's your site. I had, for my weight loss podcast, I had somebody... that I talked into having a sponsorship, and they did that just by looking at my site because it was kind of neat. It's not so much neat now. It's a little cluttery, but at the time it was neat. And they went, wow, we really like the look of your site. And so that influenced them. Your flow, how you go from topic to topic, does it sound professional, things like that. The quality of your audio and video, this probably means that you're not going to be using Blog Talk Radio, which is a website where you can use the phone to make your podcast because it sounds like somebody's frying bacon underwater. And while I will sit through bad content that's recorded well once or twice, I will not sit through great content that's been recorded poorly. Because I'm like, what is that? And it's like, the one interviewer is like, so tell me, Jim, what do you blah, blah, blah? And then Jim answers the question, and it's like, well, I like the thing. So you're constantly grabbing the volume knob and things like that. I'm like, I can't take that. I'm in the car. I'm trying to drive, and I can't hear it. Now, with that said, don't go crazy with this. Ask Rich. I get crazy about my audio. And I'll be saying, like, can you guys hear that noise? Can you hear that buzz? And Rich finally sent me an email and said, no, get over it. So you can obsess about that.
Now I'm listening for it.
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Yeah.
I wanna hear it.
And your level of professionalism, which we'll talk about here in a second when we get into advertising. If you want to have advertising on your podcast, it has to be somewhat advertising friendly. Hence, an F-bomb free zone. Now, some people think they're going to be this guy, right? Howard Stern. The thing is, what makes great content? Your content is going to make people laugh, cry, think, moan, groan, educate, or entertain. Go home, when you watch TV, when you get done, say, what did that do? It made you laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain you. If it does nothing to you, chances are you're not going to watch it anymore. And Howard Stern, when he first came out, gave you something that you couldn't find anyplace else, which was a behind-the-scenes look at the radio station. And he was yelling at his boss, and he was letting you inside. He peeled back the curtain. So it was content that you couldn't get anywhere else. It was like, wow, this is really cool. This is entertaining. I've never seen this. Oh, my gosh. It's wonderful. So, but everybody thinks if I just do duty jokes and drop the F-bomb, well, that's what Howard does. No, when he first started out, he was really unique. And the problem is, if you want to, it's a podcast. You're in control. You can do that. But don't think that every sponsor is going to want to be associated. I'll give you an example. And to do this, I have to be somewhat politically incorrect, so I apologize in advance. I met these guys in California. They had their business card, and they were upset because they had no advertising. Why? He says, man, because we are so offensive, we can offend the retarded. And I'm like, oh, is that on your business card? And he's like, yeah, and they were talking about, you know what, I'm not going to talk about what they talked about, but just the fact that we can offend the retarded was offensive enough. And I was just like, gee, genius, why aren't you getting an advertiser? Who's going to want to link their brand with that? You know, so now, for the record, there are. You know, AshleyMadison.com. Anybody know what that website's about? It's for married people that want to have an affair. You know.
What was that again? Okay.
Yeah. What's the world coming to? All right. So, well, and there's sex toy places. You know, I always tell people the internet is a lot like Main Street. The internet is a lot like Main Street. If you walk down one side of it, there's books, there's churches, and all sorts of good things. And on the other side of Main Street, you've got, you know,
Podcast.
yeah. The one thing that content is king is not this. I'll give you an example. There was a guy named Joe Vitale. He was in the movie The Secret. He's the hypnotic internet guru guy. And back in, I think, 2005, Joe came out with his podcast. He had a giant email list. And there's a website called Podcast Alley, and they had like a top 10 chart. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, Joe Vitale's podcast is at the very top of the list. Everybody's going, who is Joe Vitale? I think is how you pronounce it. Remember, Vitale, tomato. Everybody's like, who is this guy? Oh, I've heard of him. He's a big internet guru. His podcast was about Joe. It wasn't about how I can entertain you, make you laugh, make you cry, make you think, make you groan. No, it was all about Joe. Giant commercial. And the first week he was number one, and the second week he was completely off the chart. Because nobody wants to listen to a bad infomercial unless it's Saturday night and you're really, really bored, right?
I'm going to see Hopkins.
Yeah, so one way you can make money is through networks. There's Blueberry.com, there's Liberated Syndication, Mevio, okay. Podtrack, once you get a big, giant audience. Of these four, this is the most active one in terms of when I get emails saying, hey, we have a new sponsor. If you're interested, fill out your survey and things like that. So when you use a network, that's one way. Now, that means you're probably going to split some of the money with these folks. The good news is you did to get your sponsor. That's the good news. Or you can go DIY. So you can go out and find somebody to sponsor your podcast. In the case of my weight loss podcast, there was a company that made music to exercise by called Skinny Songs. And I went to them and said, hey, I have a bunch of people that are trying to get skinny. You're trying to get your music in front of people that want to get skinny. I'll let you get in front of my audience for X amount of money. A couple other ways to make money. Bonus content. So some people will, hey, here's my podcast. Some people call this a freemium model where you give away some for free. Or you can have bonus content. your back catalog. So you might give it away for free, and then after, say, 3 months, you put it behind a curtain and say if you'd like the bonus content or the back catalog, there's a guy, The History According to Bob, and you can buy all of his past episodes for 99 cents a piece. So that's one way of doing that. You can sell advertising on your show, and you can also sell advertising on your website. And what you do a lot of times is you bundle those together. Kind of like musicians go, well, you can buy the T-shirt for 10 and the CD for 10, or you can get them both for 15. Because really, you're probably going to do one or the other, or both in reality. But it makes the advertiser feel like they're getting more. You can hit the speaker circuit. Why? Because we said in that first slide that you're seen as an expert. I've been asked to speak at different music conventions. Why? Because I have a podcast. And they listen to the podcast and they go, wow, this is pretty good stuff. We should have him come in and talk at our convention. Again, you can sell a service or a product. So I do that with my podcast consulting. I do a podcast to give away fun-filled tips and insights. Daniel does that with his podcast album art and his services. What do? We give away free content. We help entertain or educate and connect with our audiences and then sell our products to them. Donations is an interesting one. We'll have some examples of these as we go forward, And free stuff. Speaking of free stuff, this is a Fitbit. It's a cool little pedometer, and when you get you get a little base that you plug into your computer, and when I get within 15 feet of it, it uploads how many steps I've taken it today, makes all sorts of pretty graphs. I didn't pay a thing for this. Why? Because I'm on the Logical Weight Loss Podcast. We're the number 3 podcast for weight loss podcast on Google. Is there any chance I could have one of those for an evaluation unit? And here's the key. I'll give you a tip. Don't ask the sales department. What is the job of the sales department? To sell things, right. Who's the department that is in charge of getting the word out? Marketing. Don't ask the sales department because they'll be, we can sell you one. Wasn't really looking to buy one. I just want to play with one, and I'll send it back. And I've sent things back. And in some cases they go, hey, thanks for the great review. Why don't you just keep it? And I always say, just because you're letting me evaluate it does not ensure a good review. In fact, I had one company that sent me stuff. I'm like, I like this, but I didn't really like this, and it was kind of a not so great review. I said, would you like me to? I can record that episode. And they went, yeah, actually, go ahead. Their philosophy was there is no bad news, just get the word out. But I've had same thing. I've had that happen a couple of times. They're like, yeah, we appreciate your feedback. We'll actually try to put that into a future version. But yeah, if you don't mind, don't do that. And I'm like, okay. Another way that you can make money with podcasting is through affiliate marketing. Now, what affiliate marketing is there are certain networks that you can sign up with, and you sign up as an affiliate. Now, what this does is this company, in this case, Commission Junction, you can find them at cj.com, they give you a link that identifies that all the traffic came from you. And what it is, basically, it's online commission sales. So if you buy my Fitbit, if you like it, and you go out to logicalloss.com/Fitbit, and you buy one, I get $12. And if you have an audience and that they start going, wow, it's only $99, that sounds really cool, $12, $12, $12, $12. So it's online commissions. Here is a report from last year, and I wasn't really doing a lot with Amazon, but here it is, January through 2010. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this is not how to quit your day job and become rich overnight. This is more podcast money. In other words, how'd you like to pay for your hosting? How'd you like to have some gas money and maybe take your wife out to eat? And you'll see here as we go through here. So here, last year, I made $165.67. And guess what I did to do that? Nothing. I put a link on a website. And 24 hours a day, people can click on that. And if they click on it and buy it, I make 4% of the sale. And I did nothing for that besides put a link. Here is a screenshot from Commission Junction, where Logical Weight Loss Podcast made $441 in 2010. At the end of the year, I made $693.67. That's just 2 networks. There's link share, there's share sale. Different companies have different affiliate products. And when you start adding those all up, all of a sudden you're like going, hey, you know what? This is better than a poke in the eye. Another example of one that I'm just using now, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/audible, you can sign up to be an Audible affiliate, and if somebody signs up for a trial, it's $15 in your pocket. And I've been using this, and that's actually working pretty good. I do a podcast about Jillian Michaels. Jillian Michaels came out with a new audiobook that was available on Audible, read by Jillian. I told that audience and ended up with a 4-figure commission check. Much better than a poke in the eye. I do a podcast for musicians. Steven Tyler from Aerosmith came out with an audiobook. I said, oh, by the way, did you guys know? If you just go to audibletrial.com/Dave, you can get that audiobook for free. And if you don't want an Audible trial, go ahead and cancel, because I'll still get my $15 commission. So the key there is, you'll notice, I didn't say I went to my musician podcast and say, hey, guess what? There's a new audiobook about NASCAR. That doesn't make any sense, because maybe the musicians are into NASCAR, maybe they're not. But it's a matter of knowing who your audience is and finding things that fit them, and also finding out what they're willing to spend. The Logical Weight Loss podcast, I pushed the Total Gym with Chuck Norris and Cindy Brinkley, right? Everybody seen that commercial? And I thought, hey, I'm just going to piggyback on all those infomercials, because they've already heard about this, and maybe this will be the 30,000th time they've heard about this, and maybe they'll buy it from me. And after about 6 months, somebody bought one, and I made $70 in commission. Pretty cool. But that was one. And so I then found a deck of playing cards where you can deal yourself a workout. I don't know what the actual price is. They're $4 or $5 for a deck of cards, and I make, I think, $1.20 per deck. And I have quadrupled the amount of money I made on the little deck of cards than I did with the Total Gym. Because apparently people went, I'm not paying to have that thing shipped here. You know, and it just sounded like something they wanted to buy in person. So you can do things. You can see what people are clicking on and what's popular and things of that nature. So I talked about free stuff. We're going to get into some actual real-life examples of how people are making stuff. This is Michael Butler, the original music podcaster. Been podcasting since 2004, and right now, the longest-running podcast out there, because the guy that invented podcasting no longer does his show. He's in Los Angeles. He's a bass player. And his fans got together and paid for him to go to London, and he interviewed one of his heroes on his podcast. It's a music podcast, but he also interviews musicians. And he got to interview his hero, and that developed a relationship. And that relationship blossomed to where he said, hey, I'm going to be in San Francisco, which is where Michael's from. I'm doing a show. Would you like to play with me? And Michael's like, I get to play with my hero? Awesome. He did. Well, later, that same hero did a show in London for this special show. And Michael's like, man, I wish I could go, but I can't afford a ticket to London. His audience heard this, and they got together and paid for his ticket, and then they let him, there was a fan in London that let him stay at his house. So you do not typically make money from the actual physical file of the podcast, unless you're selling the back catalog or something like that. What you do is you develop a relationship with your audience, and that relationship can then be levied to be monetized in some way, to benefit from that. This is Emily Morse. She does a podcast called Sex with Emily. It's not pornographic. It's kind of Dr. Ruth, except she's 20 and not 60 like Dr. Ruth. She does this podcast. Her podcast landed her a job on CBS Radio. And the radio show is now opening doors to television pilots, reality TV offers, books, and more. She's hoping to expand her audience and to take Sex with Emily show into syndication throughout the U.S. Now, the interesting thing is, if you've ever been involved in the radio industry, that was you, right? What's the greatest thing about the radio industry? About every 3 years you get fired, right? Yeah. So since the last time I've done this presentation, she got fired. But the great thing about podcasting is you control everything. She controls her website. She controls the content. And you know what? Fine. You're going to cut me off from radio? That's okay. My fans know where to find me. And they all know her website, and it continues on. And she started a membership site now, and she's doing it that way.
Who's the guy in Chicago that just did that?
Yeah, Steve Dahl. Yeah. And Glenn Beck has done that. So this example is from a podcast called Ready, Set, Knit. They have 13,000 listeners per episode, and it's an example of how you can boost products with your podcast. the host name is Kathy. When she and her husband discuss a particular yarn or pattern on the show, they see the traffic to that order page on the company's website spike. So when they're like, hey, this is really cool, I love this, whatever, green yarn or whatever, they mention it on the podcast, sales go up. Kathy cites promoting the podcast on the company's other social media channels, hence you do have to promote things, and keeping the content interesting, sticking to a schedule, that's important because, again, shows that you're reliable, and not using the podcast as a commercial. And the article I got this from, she said, I just feel like I'm sitting on the front porch knitting and I'm talking to my friend. When I record a podcast, I write bullet points and I basically sit down as if you are sitting right there and I'm just telling you something cool I heard. And that's one of the things, not that that's, you have to podcast like that, but that's one of the compliments I get about this is, Dave, I feel like I know you. I feel like it's just you and me when I listen. And I said, that's because it is. It just so happens that I also let, another 1,000 people listening at the same time. If you're not sure what to charge for your advertising, this is Greg Fitzsimmons. He's been on Letterman, Leno. He's been on VH1 a bunch. He's got a new show on Fuel. He's been on Sirius Satellite Radio. And yet he started a podcast. Why? Because of the power of podcasting. He promotes all his gigs. He's a stand-up comedian. So he made a joke one day. He has a little segment on his podcast called Overheard. And he said, hey, if somebody sends me $10, you can sponsor Overheard. Somebody did. And he went, never thought about this. So the next time he put it up on eBay. And for a 30-second bid, he got $212 for one spot. So if you're not sure what to charge, let your fans figure it out. Put it on eBay. So that's one way of doing it. Donations. This is the guy that invented podcasting. His name's Adam Curry. You might remember him if you're my age from MTV, along with another guy named Dave Weiner. He does a show called The No Agenda Show. And on their 200th episode, they received a total of $2,993.49 from 14 different contributors. And they did basically the same thing on their 300th show. What they do, which is really interesting, is they have a plan where you can sign up to give them, I know one is $300 3 times. And when you donate $1,000, they knight you. They have this whole big audio thing. I now know, I knight you, whatever, sirloin of beef. And you get a ring. They send you a ring that shows your official night of the No Agenda Show. And they get people that do this on a regular basis, $1,000. He just did a tour in a Winnebago around the country. And I went to one. And people just handed the guy cash. Why? Because they talk about news that should be on the news. Instead of like, here's what Kim Kardashian wore at her wedding, they're talking about, hey, did you know that there's rebels in Mexico that are killing people and we're selling them ammunition and things. You're like, really? So it's a really cool show. Here again, content. This is the content I can't get anyplace else. And people are willing to pay for that. So donations are working. And I've actually adopted this. I've been trying this at the Logical Weight Loss Podcast. And now if you donate anything, I list you as a producer. I'm like, hey, thanks for being a producer. Today's producer is Teresa Reed. Teresa, thank you so much for sending in your $10. I haven't had great luck with donations, but it's an option. This is a guy named George Robb. He's a musician, and his audience is so loyal that he put out 99 episodes of content. And it's interesting stuff. He's a very creative guy. And on the 100th episode, his fans, who all leave comments on his blog, he has one super fan that got all these people together and they recorded a podcast for him. That's kind of bizarre. You think about that. There's a lot of technology involved there. And so then later this year, he actually released a CD, put a golden ticket in the CD, and some guy in Finland got it. And George is like, I was thinking, Tennessee or maybe Oregon would be far away because he's from Pennsylvania. But sure enough, he got asked he's a skeptic or a critical thinker or an atheist, take your pick. And he is seen as an expert. Why? Because he's got a podcast. And he got asked to speak at a convention overseas. And while he was over there, he said, hey, I can now go, because one of the prizes of the golden ticket was a concert in your house. So his convention got him overseas. He located the guy, said, I'll play in your house. And once everybody heard that he was over there, his fans got together and scheduled a European tour. Well, if you're here, we can get you over here. We'll put you up. So, again, the loyal audience came through. Why? Because he was seen as an expert. He got the Ask It a Speaking gig. And he's also selling more CDs of his music than ever before. So it's kind of an all in three there. So you want things to fit your audience. I talked a little bit about my Total Gym experience. Don't sell everything. If you're going to get into affiliate marketing and you see that, hey, this has a huge commission, it's not going to do any good to try to sell knitting needles to the Headbanger podcast, because I don't think headbangers are, knitters, if I go stereotypically there, right? Make it easy to remember. In some cases, if you go to podcastvoicemail.com, that is my Call 8 affiliate link. So instead of saying, go to call8.com / equals 36752x9, which is the link that shows it came from Dave, I just bought a domain name and made it easy, podcastvoicemail.com. So there are tricks you can do to make things easy. And there are plugins, without getting super geeky. There are things you can do in WordPress that make it easy to remember as well. Like if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com / hosting, that's an affiliate link for my favorite web host. If you're going to be doing any kind of advertising, you need to prove your effectiveness. So try to have, if somebody's sponsoring your show, see if they can give you a coupon, see if they can give you like a landing page, something to show that, hey, because of my audience, this is how many sales you had. This proves that they came from me, because it's really going to be up to you to prove that it was effective. And when you see it was effective, they'll re-up. Cliff Ravenscraft, sponsor of this, has a podcast about it's family from the heart. Anybody know? Help me out on this. Is that it? He has a sponsor that has home learning, kind of focused on home learning stuff. And he's been doing that podcast for like 2 or 3 years now. Won't say how much it is, obviously, but he says it pretty much pays his mortgage. And it's been going on 3 years. If it wasn't working, I don't think they would have re-upped for 3 years. But that's an example of Cliff has their niche. So, they're willing to put out that money. It's working. They're getting a return on investment. And so there you go. And that's a great example of that. And so I think they have some sort of coupon or something that identifies that they come from Cliff. So the bottom line is, okay, are you making any money with your podcast? If you want to, no, I don't have a sponsor. You don't have to wait on a sponsor. You can get affiliate marketing and make your own is one way. And again, you can also sell products. You can be seen as an expert. You can get speaking gigs. There are all sorts of ways to benefit from your podcast. Any questions on anything? Anything you guys want to chime in? I'm just spewing along here. So far, so good. If you want more information, again, I'm from the School of Podcasting.com. My actual book is at morepodcastmoney.com. If that's my voicemail number, and my Dave at morepodcastmoney.com is my email address. And here's what are these things called? QR codes? Yeah. Daniel, you're going to have to school me on these. I know what they do. I've never seen one, though. And then here's my link, and that'll be in the link. So anybody have any examples or anything that you guys are doing? Or?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've seen for me is I did this podcast called How I Got My Job, howigotmyjob.com. I haven't put episodes up in a while, but just so that I could be seen. I mean, what that did is because I was interviewing all of these people, sharing their stories about how they got work, I started to see a number of trends, and then people started asking me to come on their show for an interview or to do a program or to come and speak here locally in the greater Cincinnati area about that. And so and then just again be seen as an expert, and then because of my expertise in using some of these tools, it's led me to get some work or to from that perspective. So even if your goal is to still work full time somewhere, you could do a podcast about something that you're really passionate about, and you could see some that could show off some more of your expertise.
There's actually I interviewed the Creative Pen with 2 N's at the end of that.
Yeah,
is a podcast for writers, and she started off interviewing writers that were successful at marketing their books and things like that. And through rubbing shoulders with the experts, she's now seen as an expert and is asked to speak. And she's got, I think, a course now on book marketing and things of that nature. So,
didn't you interview Bob from the Beancast?
Bob from the Beancast.
Yeah. So what's his? And I've only listened to one of his episodes, but what's his? He I think from what I remember from hearing that interview on your Power Podcasting show, is he didn't know enough about what was going on in marketing, so he asked a bunch of people to come up on his show,
right? And
he led off with, here's the stuff we're going to talk about. And he says he's learned so much from what other people are sharing, and it's helped to build his own personal credibility.
Exactly. There's a guy in Australia whose name is escaping me right now. He used to do the Marketers Podcast. And as soon as I hit stop on the record, it'll pop in my head. He can't do his podcast anymore because he got too much business from his podcast. And the beautiful thing about it, I almost had his name, he was trying to get into this one company, and he couldn't get past the gatekeeper, the assistant or the secretary or whatever you want to refer to, the front desk person. But he put out his podcast, and the CEO of that company listened to it on the treadmill and said, call this guy and get him in here. It's gonna drive me nuts, but it's an example of reaching a global audience.
And it is easy to get guests.
Yeah.
And I've had several authors on there now. It's just either get them on Twitter or Facebook. It's flat out easy.
Yeah, and
there's only one that I haven't gotten yet, and I've actually called those people, and he'll come around.
You'll have people. I'm always amazed. I offered to interview a media host, so people, a company that would host your MP3 files. My audience is podcasters. They won't come on my show. There you go. Yeah. Todd will come on any day, right? And so that's when I went, okay, that's when I don't recommend that company. I also couldn't find out where they were. They finally admitted they were started in Canada, but they won't come on my show. And that's when I went, okay, that's a little too weird. And I've had one other guy that was a blogger that started a podcast and had great success. I'm like, this is what I'm looking for, because I always keep telling people, if you have a successful blog, start a podcast, and he's too busy to come on my show. But no. Pat Flynn. Nice guy. Still love Pat. He's just busy. So, yeah.
I have never tried this, but I got to believe if you mention products or services in your podcast, and then you inform those companies that they've been mentioned on your podcast.
There you go.
Either via their corporate Twitter feed, or just send somebody an email in that company. I got to believe that it'll compel somebody sooner or later, especially if it's their corporate Twitter feed, that that somebody will listen. Somebody in marketing, somebody in sales will listen when they hear that their company was mentioned on your podcast, just to see what you're talking about.
I'll disagree with that, because you brought up Steve Gall.
Yeah.
He loves the pizza pizzazz. In fact, he did Pizza Night in America. And this is a guy, if there was no Steve Gall, there'd be no Howard Stern. And they would never return his calls. And he had a special song for Pizza Night in America. And they actually could track their sales. People were calling it, I bought the Pizza Pizzazz. They sold at least 100 of them. No way they wouldn't return his call. Wouldn't even sponsor a show.
And they know that content is there because they're searching for it. If it's a viable company.
Anything you give me for free, I'll take it for anything.
What they're going to do is they're going to say that's great free adverts as long as it's not negative. Now, if you say something negative about them, they're going to connect with you a different way. And they're going to either try to correct it or they're going to tell you cease and desist. So the big thing is their marketing division is paying attention. They're just not going to get any sales to you. As a part of it.
The other side of it is if a company has an advertising firm that handles it all for them, you're wasting your time talking to them.
Right.
Because they make nothing from you being engaged. So you have to find another way. There's more than one door into a building. By fire code, there has to be. So, I mean, I don't know anything about that. But so you're wasting your time talking to the advertising firm.
Back to what I also write a blog of where I've shared job search success tips and things like that I've had authors or PR people from that. Most recently sent me a copy of Life is What You Make It by Peter Buffett. Peter Buffett is Warren Buffett's son, and he wrote this book saying you have to go find your own way. And they just reached out and said, would you be interested in receiving a copy of this book?
There's a publisher whose name escapes me, unfortunately, right now. Apparently, well, again, if I didn't mention this at the beginning, if I'm a little weird today, I'm whopping on about 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of sleep. So if you wonder, that Dave guy seems a little scatterbrained. It's the brain's not here. But there's a publishing company that I reviewed one of their books, and they just put me on a list. So I'll just go to the mailbox every now and then. I'm like, oh, cool, here's a Christian book on weight loss. Great, awesome. And I just and I read it and email them back and say, I like this book. Can I, talk to the author? Can I set up an interview? In some cases, they'll say yes. In some cases, they're too busy, in which case I'll just talk about the book then, things like that. Anybody else?
And to talk about finding your niche, I got a buddy that does a video on YouTube, and he talks about Android phones, and Sido sends him free stuff every time he gets a new phone for that new phone for him to review, and he's getting, I don't know, it's free stuff, and he's getting, I don't know how many hits out his website or anything like that, but now he's also got Google AdSense. He's making about $20-$30 a day off his Google AdSense off his YouTube page.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, and that Google AdSense is something that I just set it up on some of my websites, and I forget about it, and then every so often I'll see the check come from Google in the mail, and it's like, oh, that really helped at that time. It's like, I won't.
It's another one where money for nothing. Yes.
Another thing to bear in mind is when you're dealing with advertisers or sponsorships and things like that, a lot of bigger companies have a media buying firm. So even if you get a hold of somebody at that company, generally it's a media buyer at an advertising agency that makes those decisions, and you really need to speak their language, because a lot of old school advertising agencies, they don't understand the differences between a podcast, selling an advertisement in a podcast, and selling an advertisement on a radio show. And you really have to be very explicit and be prepared to talk in their language to sell them on the benefits of it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a whole section in my book where I explain how they sell advertising and radio, and there's a thing called CPM, which means, we'll pay you, whatever, $9 per 1,000 listeners, which makes sense when you're radio and you've got, 30,000 listeners or whatever. But now you've got a podcast with 800 subscribers. You're like, well, it's going to take me 2 shows just to make $9. So that's where, again, with radio, it's kind of shotgun marketing. You're spraying it out there because you've got, it's not quality, it's quantity. So you're sending it out to, the 50,000-watt AM radio station on the drive home, and, you hope some of these people will get it. With a podcast, you've got that niche. I've got the knitting people. I've got the sled dog people. I've got the people who are afraid of the dentist podcast. It's a niche. And if you've got a product to, help hypnotize people into not being afraid of the dentist, I've got your audience. So don't sell out, because one of the things I've seen, in fact, I'm actually doing a test right now. There's a website called Fiverr, Fiverr.com.
Greatest site ever made.
And say what?
Greatest site ever made.
And you can get all sorts of things for $5. And I said, all right, I'll bite. So you can sponsor the Logical Weight Loss Podcast for $5. Now that's hideous, because I'm going to get $5 for, I don't know, probably 800 downloads an episode, depending on what I'm talking about. So that's like 0.002 cents a download. It's horrible. I'm just doing it right now to go, all right, let's see. I do a lot of that with podcasting stuff. It's like, okay, let's see what happens if I do this. Just so I can then...
Do you feel that diminishes your brand?
Yes, I do. It's something that I go, I'm going to do something that I would never recommend somebody else to do.
But that also enhances your brand, because part of what you're doing here is you're helping to coach people on,
It's kind of sometimes I want to make the mistake for you, so you don't have to. But yeah, when I did it, I just felt like, in a way, there's a part of me when I clicked on, do this, that I just had this voice in my head say, you're kind of betraying your audience. And then there's all sorts of stipulations there that say, I'm not going to be promoting this and that, and I have full respect. And yes. Oh, question. Oh, good.
Well, I wanted to add to that. I've used Fiverr or Fiverr or Fruver or whatever, And to do the $5 sponsorship kinds of things, I have a clean comedy podcast. And that is what Dave is talking about, is a niche. And what's cool is people will read that, and several of the people who have contacted me through Fiverr want to appeal to that audience. So in some way, they work. Like, it's been a couple comedy kind of related websites that have wanted to pay $5 to be on my podcast, even though at that time I only had, and I had even told them I only had like 100 downloads a month of an episode, and they were willing to give me $5.
Well, the other thing you can do, too, is the person listening doesn't know that they paid $5. So they might contact you and say, hey, can you tell us how much does it cost to sponsor your podcast? And you can make a media kit and say, here's who the audience is, and here's how many downloads, and then and then it's, whatever. It's $40 an episode, and you have to buy 4 episodes at a time. Things like that. You could package it. But you might use Fiverr to prime the pump. Maybe. I'm thinking this out. This is me off the top of my head, so I don't know what do you guys think of that, but it's that's what I've done with affiliate marketing. It sounds like a sponsor. So go to schoolofpodcasting.com/hosting. And then somebody else go, well, how can I get mentioned in your podcast? Well, here's my media kit. Does that sound dirty? Okay. But I'm whoever asked that, it is kind of weird when I did the Fiverr thing. I'm like, not sure if I'm crazy about this, but I will try. So it's a prime of the pump thing. Any other questions? This is awesome.
Just one more comment. There's a website called Blogging for Books.
Yes.
That's by Multnomah or Walbrook. I forget. It's Multnomah. It's one of the bigger publishers.
Bloggingforbooks.com.
Right. Bloggingforbooks.com. There's a couple other ones. Book Sneeze. There's
Book Sneeze.
Book Sneeze.
As in like a chew sneeze?
Yes.
Okay, not books, knees.
No, book sneeze.
Gotcha.
Like you need, God bless you.
Right.
Yeah, and if you go there, you can actually get, for 200 words blip on your blob on your blog, you can get free books of anything you really want. You can even get ebooks of things that aren't even released yet. And then you can help promote that way and get affiliate things that way too.
Well, there's another website is called Blogvertise, and they will pay you anywhere from $5 to, I think I saw $25 for a blog post. The key there is kind of what I mentioned. Don't just sell out to, like, I keep getting things like uniforms for health officials because they think my podcast is for health. And I'm like, well, it is, but it has nothing to do with hospitals. It's how to avoid being in a hospital. But they're like, yes, if you write a blog post about our uniforms, we'll send you $15. That's where I went, okay, this is not related to my audience. So,
The way I got free stuff is Clout.
Clout?
Clout, K-L-O-U-T.
Your Clout score?
It's up and coming right now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My daughter thinks it's the greatest. I got stuff tangled.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there are any other questions, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Hopefully that made sense. And there you have it. Want to give a special shout out and an apology to Daniel Lewis, who was running the whole thing. Poor guy was just, what a day. Running on adrenaline all day, I'm sure. And he was actually coming in after my presentation, and I was having so much fun answering questions and just talking to people. I think I left him a good, 2.5 minutes to set up for his presentation. So Daniel, I'm sorry, buddy. I was on a roll and having fun. So if you're looking to start a podcast, you're like, well, that sounds like fun. I want to get free stuff, and I want to have people give me money, and I want to sell my product and keep my brand. And maybe if you don't, here's another thing. I mentioned this. You don't have to make money with your podcast. Maybe you're tired of trying to get a hold of the local news, and you want to make people laugh, or maybe you want to help people, or you just want to get the word out about you. You have an opinion, and you think it's important. Come see me. Schoolofpodcasting.com. We've got step-by-step tutorials. Don't forget, through the end of the year, you can use the coupon code LISTENER30 and get 30% off. We've got step-by-step tutorials. We've got resources, and we've got me, your personal podcast coach, to guide you along the way. If you'd like to contact me, my phone number is 330-807-5236. Did I just give out my cell phone? I did. My phone number is 888-563-3228. You can email me, Dave at schoolofpodcasting.com. or you can leave a comment out in the show notes at schoolofpodcasting.com. Just leave a comment. A lot of fun things coming up in the future. I'm really backlogged, so Fred and everybody else who gave me a last 5 and 5, those will be coming up. If you have one, call it in. We'll be talking about the Heil PR40. Is it really that good? I will do a shootout with my fun-filled Electro Voice RE320 and compare it to the Heil PR40. If you're interested in a Heil PR40, let me know. I do sell podcasting equipment or any other equipment that you're interested in. Again, 888-563-3228. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about protecting your content and how the fact that the great thing about a podcast is you control everything. And that is something that is a privilege, but it's also a responsibility to your audience. We'll be talking about that. And you know what else we're going to talk about? Well, whatever you call me or write me about, say, hey, why don't you talk about this on your podcast? Because I know it's my podcast, but it's really our podcast. So whatever you want to hear, let me know, and we will add that to future episodes. So thanks so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Dave Jackson, your personal podcast coach. And until next week, class is dismissed.